I unironically love Scott's Tots. An episode most Office fans skip on rewatch, an episode the vast majority declares unwatchable, an episode so infamous it makes people cynical about the Office's humor as a whole, I genuinely love. I keep saying words like unironically and genuinely because I cannot stress this enough. I am not making this video just to be a contrarian. The Office is probably my favorite show, and I'm just a fan who is constantly confused when people rip into this episode and call it unwatchable. To me, this episode is one of the less realistic, fluffier, and more heartwarming episodes of the entire series, and I will explain all of that, so let's get into it. What is up, guys? My name is David and welcome to the channel, and welcome to the very first video on YouTube of a straight white dude talking about The Office. If that sounds interesting, consider subscribing. I usually don't beg for likes at the beginning of videos, but this is a totally different video style that I'm trying out and hopefully going to take the channel in this direction. So if at any point you're enjoying this video, please drop a like. It would mean a lot. So for starters, what the heck is a Scott's Tots and why do people hate it? Scott's Tots is an infamous episode of The Office where basically a decade ago Michael promised to pay for a group of lower income kids' college tuition. And of course, Michael being Michael, he cannot follow through, which leads him having to tell all of the kids this after they put on a big show thanking him. And the big complaint with this episode is that it's hard to watch, which I can agree with and understand. I mean, it's cringy at times, sure, but I feel like there's a lot to appreciate in this episode and a good gateway to explore the different comedy styles of The Office and what exactly makes the show so good. Yes, I gathered all of this from
Hey, Mr. Scott, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? Make our dreams come true.
Now, to understand why I enjoyed this episode of The Office, or really any episode of The Office, we have to look at the comedy style of The Office. It's pretty universally agreed upon that The Office has incredible writing, and it absolutely does. Not only does it have some of the best comedy writers working today, the environment that Greg Daniels crafted is something that you can't replicate. It's that lightning in a bottle show that is The Office that leads to such great moments in writing. Now, even though The Office is classified as a sitcom, meaning situational comedy, most of The Office's humor is either dry, subtle, or observational. This is not to say that it doesn't have its fair share of unrealistic situations that lead to comedy. It most certainly does, especially in the later seasons. But most of the comedy, and more truly where it thrives, is in these small, realistic, mundane, and hysterical moments. Small, real, relatable, as Bren Forrester, writer on the show, said. A good example that comes to mind that literally had me gasping for air the first time I watched it is,
Well. How the turntables...
Subtle, realistic, totally in Michael Scott's character, and earned. There was a good 3 minutes of tension that was released by this brilliant piece of comedic writing. On its surface, yes, Michael said something wrong and that's kind of dumb, but everything leading up to that moment cannot be overlooked. Compare this to something like Kevin swimming around in Chile, iconic, sure, clever, not really. And now kind of approaching the point of this video, this scene and Scott's Tots are example of situational comedy. There's the genius way to do it, there's the lazy way to do it, and then there's the acceptable and overlooked good way of doing it. And I view the episode Scott's Tots as a very clever way of situational comedy. And this shouldn't even be a surprise. The same duo who wrote Dinner Party, Gene and Lee, wrote this episode as well. Speaking of Dinner Party, that is a fan favorite and arguably the best episode of the entire series. This is subjective, but I find Dinner Party far more uncomfortable to watch. I don't find either of these episodes uncomfortable, but if I had to pick one that was more uncomfortable, it would definitely be Dinner Party. And that's because the inherent nature of that episode is a lot more grounded than Scott's Tots. The moments of the show that I can't watch and have to skip are just that, little moments that feel way too real. Some examples that come to mind are in season 6, episode 3, when Jim talks to the bullpen about raises. Also, Jim talking to Pam's ex in season 7 is literally the hardest thing I've ever had to watch. Why did they include that? That was painful. And therein lies why I can enjoy this episode. While it has some semblance of reality, it doesn't feel real. Everything does feel very situational. This happens, or this happens, or this happens, and then embarrassment happens. Everything feels very scripted, which is okay because it's situational comedy. That is the style of writing for this episode, and I feel like they hit the nail on the head. I mean, they literally have a dance show for him, so it has to suck even more when he says, hey, I can't pay for your tuition. In the later seasons, most of the characters just become caricatures of their former selves, and the plots become more and more ridiculous. And the writing does increasingly become dumber and more juvenile, and I don't really enjoy those episodes, but I feel like here in season 6, when it was still a good and solid show, past its glory days, but still a good show, So in this episode, there's still some semblance of good and clever writing, especially in the bizarre understanding of Michael Scott's character that can be exploited to this insane level. This episode offers that, but what else does this episode offer? As I've referred to it many times at this point, this is a clever piece of situational comedy. Also, Michael being teamed up with Aaron instead of, say, Pam, or especially one of the guys of The Office, kind of saves this episode, and I will elaborate on that. But the basic formula for a good sitcom episode that I just made up is basically take an aspect of a character, dilute it to the point until it creates a problem, and then have some kind of cathartic ending. Michael Scott is a deeply flawed but wonderful person, and this episode is the epitome of that.
I've made some empty promises in my life, but hands down, that was the most generous.
And with Aaron being here instead of anybody else, he is stuck. He is trapped in the situation. Once again, Michael at his core is a good guy who just does dumb things, but with always some semblance of good intent. I mean, when you see him at the school, you can tell that he made this promise not because he was malicious or trying to get attention, just because he genuinely loved these kids and wanted to help them. He even remembers all of the kids' names years later. And then we have Aaron, who is a very naive person and above all else just wants to be accepted into some kind of family. One of my favorite scenes from this episode, and the reason I do call it an overall heartwarming episode, which is kind of weird to say, but that's what I consider it to be, is the conversation on the way back from the school in the car. Aaron helps Michael see the silver lining in this disaster of a situation. Michael then compliments her on her job performance, and in this moment, it's just two people who helped each other in the only way the other one can. Once again, I'm not trying to be a contrarian, but I truly do find the B plot of this episode to be harder to watch. Dwight is becoming a full caricature, and the bullpen's reaction to this obvious mix-up is hard to watch and very out of character. And once again, the reason I find a moment like that hard to watch is because miscommunication happens in real life. This, not so much. At least, it never happened to me. I hope it didn't happen to you either. The intent of this video was never to change minds or anything, because at the end of the day, comedy is subjective, especially what makes someone uncomfortable. That is super subjective. I'm just someone who truly does enjoy this very hated on episode of this wonderful show, and if I can get one person to like break out of this meme-like hate that this episode gets, because that's something else I want to say, I think some of you are over-exaggerating how much you dislike this episode, because it's a meme at this point. You're just like, oh yeah, Scott's Tot is cringy. I think you guys are being brainwashed, and I'm here to save you, so this is like the resistance, okay? Kind of like communism.
Oh, it's just a social club, you know, like the French Revolution or the Black Panthers or communism.
And that is the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I had so much fun writing this very nerdy script, just analyzing the writing style of The Office, and I think that's what this video ended up being more about. But what can I say? It's a great show, and as an aspiring writer, or whatever the heck I'm calling myself these days, I appreciate it. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and if you did enjoy this video, please give it a like. That would mean a ton, and that'll let me know if this commentary style of videos are good for me and the channel. So please drop a like if you enjoyed. That is all for today, guys. I will see you in the next video. May the force be with you.